Welcome. My name is Joshua Hakes, and I'm pleased to present to you my capstone project, Project Road, a wilderness rescue device. I would first like to introduce you to Sadie, a young adventurous college student who loves the outdoors and loves to hike. Over spring break, Sadie and a few of her friends from college decided to travel to Utah to visit and hike some of the amazing national parks. On their list is Zion National Park. During their hike at Zion, Sadie unfortunately trips and falls off the trail down a steep incline where she sustains some major injuries. On top of having some major scrapes and bruises, Sadie has a noticeable fracture on her right ankle, as well as a possible concussion, resulting in her being immobilized. As Sadie and her friends were deep into the hiking trail, it could take up to 2 hours for emergency medical services, or EMS, to arrive on scene and assist her. So, how does Sadie get help? But first, let's pause and take a look at a different journey. My journey. I will be breaking up my journey into 4 parts: my process, my solution, alternative markets, and then we will take a look back and do some recap. We will begin with my project process. Like all good journeys, my journey began with a roadmap. My roadmap begins with clarifying and researching the problem, then moving into ideation and conceptualization. Once a solution has been found, I will begin developing the product in CAD software. And finally, I will implement my design in the form of a presentation. Having thought out my journey, I began to think about what makes a successful project. Well, a successful project is one that is desirable, feasible, and viable. I originally wanted my capstone project to focus on my CAD and ideation skills. However, this is what it ended up looking like. Lots and lots of research. And that's okay. I've learned that a great solution follows a deep understanding of the problem. I then started my project with a single group of people in mind: EMS. I wanted to know how design could either improve the effectiveness of EMS providers or reduce experienced injuries. My initial research led me to this statistic, which states that work-related injuries among EMS providers is 3 times higher than the national average among all occupations. Some of the most common injuries faced by EMS providers are motor vehicle incidents, false slips and trips, violence and assault, exposure to harmful substances, and the one I wanted to focus on, overexertion and body motion injuries, at 28%. Of the body motion injuries, back injury is the most common and occurs mainly during patient handling. This is what led me to my initial problem statement: how might we reduce the rate of back injury among EMS providers? It was at this point that I was advised to take a step back and to take a look at the bigger picture. In order to do this, I needed to gain a deeper understanding of the day-to-day operations of an EMS provider. I accomplished this by creating a journey map with the help from my advisor and paramedic, Tom Ballier. I then created a stakeholder map to understand who influences and who is being influenced by EMS providers. Realizing the amount of variability an EMS provider may find themselves in, I created a mind map of the different medical emergencies that EMS could find themselves. It was at this point that I came to the conclusion that EMS is too broad of a topic and that I needed to narrow down my project focus. After some thought, I landed on Wilderness Rescue EMS, a branch of first responders that are highly trained in mountain and wilderness rescue scenarios. To gain a better understanding of the operations of Wilderness Rescue EMS, I again created a journey map. I then compared the Wilderness Rescue journey map with the normal EMS journey map I created before, and came to the conclusion that they are mostly similar, except for 2 main differences. The first difference is that the time it takes for Wilderness Rescue EMS to arrive at the patient is generally much longer than the typical EMS response. And second, the environments that Wilderness Rescue EMS find themselves in are generally much more extreme. With this in mind, I created a list of design principles which are guidelines that the solution must abide by. The solution must be durable, easy to clean, reduce risk, needs to be trustworthy, adaptable, mobile, and feasible. Using these principles as fuel, my team and I were able to come up with some interesting and revolutionary ideas. I was then in charge of narrowing down these solutions, which I did by placing these ideas in 4 groups based on what the customer's favorite would be, the darling product, the most feasible, and the most out there. It was at this point that I had two epiphanies. First, patients and bystanders are a key resource in wilderness rescue scenarios. And secondly, what if EMS personnel didn't need to carry all the necessary supplies to the patient? Thinking on these epiphanies, I created a matrix that compared the best 6 ideas using the design principles I created earlier as a guideline. Based on the results from the matrix, I landed on the hibernating helper system. This system utilizes drones placed in strategic locations around national parks to deliver medical supplies and equipment to the patient. At this point, I pivoted the focus of my capstone from the provider to the patient. To reflect this change, I needed to update my design brief to how can we empower patients and bystanders to effectively deliver helpful and often life-saving procedures during an extreme outdoor emergency? With this problem statement in mind, it was finally time to start chasing the solution. But first, back to research. During my research, I came across the golden hour, which is the medical term that refers to the critical first 60 minutes following a traumatic injury, during which prompt medical attention can significantly improve a patient's outcome. If we take a look back at Sadie, we realize that Sadie is in fact outside of this golden hour, because it could take up to 2 hours for EMS to arrive and assist Sadie. This again begs the question, how is Sadie going to get help? Well, with the hibernating helper system in place, Sadie or her friends could activate a device which they received upon entering the park, which alerts a nearby helper drone and brings helpful and necessary equipment to her in well under an hour. There currently exists some revolutionary drone technology created by Zipline, which I think would be a great fit for this system. Zipline is a company that is currently working on a solution for urban drone delivery, which has technology that could be useful in wilderness areas as well. Now that we know how the equipment can be delivered to the patient in under an hour, how do we administer the medication? Currently, there are 2 main methods EMS administer medication to patients during traumatic injuries. The first method is intravenous cannulation, or IV. This is the process of administering medication directly into the bloodstream by inserting a catheter into the vein. After researching this procedure, I wondered if it would be possible for patients to administer their own IVs, or if an untrained individual could. This led to some ideation where I explored some fully automated delivery methods as well as some semi-automated delivery methods. Upon doing some further research, I began to notice some major obstacles with the IV delivery method. Mainly, that there is a 10 to 40% failure rate, and this is among trained professionals. Now imagine an untrained professional trying to deliver this method in a stressful environment. Impossible. Why is the failure rate so high? Well, there are 2 main reasons. The first is, IV cannulation is an extremely nuanced procedure with many steps. The second reason is, the veins can actually retract into the body when a patient is in medical shock, dehydrated, or stressed, which are all very possible scenarios during a traumatic injury. This leads to the second method, intraosseous cannulation, or IO. This is the process of administering medication directly into the bone marrow by drilling a catheter into the bone. Researching this process got me thinking of being in a situation where I needed to conduct this procedure on myself or someone else, and I couldn't help but think if I could even do this procedure, or would I even attempt it? This led me to the biggest obstacle with IO cannulation, which is fear. Fear of making the situation worse. But what if you couldn't make the situation worse? With this question in mind, I began to ideate on possible ways a patient couldn't make the situation worse. I explored some semi-automated solutions as well as a fully automated system, which is what I chose to move forward with. Introducing ROAD, which stands for Rapid Osseous Access Device, and this is the world's first automated IO cannulation device. I first had to think of how this solution would function and how the patient would interact with the device. I did this through sketching, which can be seen alongside this exploded view of the device. So how does this device work? Step 1. After retrieving the device from the drone, the patient will need to activate the device by pressing the activate button on the screen. The device will then talk them through the remaining steps, beginning with removing the device from the pocket sleeve, which is carrying all the necessary supplies for both the procedure as well as some handy first aid equipment. Step 2. The patient or bystander will place the uninjured leg into the device with the knee roughly in the middle and the foot pointing in an upward direction. Step 3. Disinfect the insertion site with isopropyl wipes. Select the correct needle and then insert the IO needle into the device. Step 4. Close the device, tap the flashing button on the screen to initiate the scan, then apply pressure to the upper thigh of the leg that is in the device, and then once prompted, swipe the screen to begin the procedure. The procedure goes as follows. The infrared camera located in the device will locate the insertion site, then position the needle over the site and automatically administer the IO. Once in place, the device will automatically separate the catheter from the needle and dispose of the needle in the needle disposal bin located on the side of the device. This needle can then be disposed of after the procedure in a proper manner. Step 5. When prompted, release pressure from the thigh, open the device, and unstrap the patient. Step 6. Apply the stabilizer dressing. Step 7. Flush the insertion site using the provided saline syringe. Step 8. Administer the medication. After the procedure is complete, simply wait for EMS providers to arrive. Once they arrive, they will quickly assess the patient and prepare to transport the patient to the hospital for continuing care. This device will also reduce the stress on the provider as they simply need to focus on transporting the patient. Once the patient is en route to the hospital, a first responder will need to hang back in order to first dispose of the used needle, and 2. Clean the device, which is made easy by its removable trays. Now we will look at some alternative markets where this device could be utilized. Currently, EMT basics aren't licensed or trained to administer IVs or IOs. However, with the Rode device, this wouldn't be necessary as the device is capable of automatically providing this procedure. I like to think of this device as being similar to the AED, which is a device that walks an inexperienced user through a list of steps in order to save a life. This device can be found in many public spaces, including in nursing homes. Now, imagine that grandma is in her nursing home when she experiences a heart attack. The staff working are not equipped to deal with the situation, and the only possible solution is to wait for EMS to arrive. But by the time EMS arrive, it could be too late. However, with the Rode system, the staff could simply activate the device and follow the list of steps to deliver the life-saving medication. Another market I could see this device being implemented is in the military. Currently, most of the servicemen and women aren't trained to administer this level of medication to patients. However, there are numerous scenarios where this device could be the difference between life and death. Now, let's take a look back and do some recap. I started this project with a group of people in mind, EMS. I asked the question, how can design either improve their effectiveness or prevent injury? Then, after following the rabbit trail of research, I pivoted my project from focusing on the provider to the patient. I then asked the question, how can we empower patients and bystanders to effectively deliver helpful and often life-saving procedures during an extreme outdoor emergency? The answer to this question is the Rode system. As this project is still in the conceptual phase, there are still many questions that need to be answered and many steps that need to be taken. The next steps for this project start with going back to research into technology and manufacturing. Then, further development needs to be made in order to refine the device. Rode also needs to be fully engineered and tested to ensure the patient's safety. Lastly, a proper business model needs to be built around this device to figure out how this device is either going to save the industry money or make them money. Thank you for listening to my capstone presentation.